everybody. It is time now for the OU Weekly Matchup Show. The Sooners coming off their best performance of the season, a 63-21 win over Texas. But now it's time to get ready for the Kansas Jayhawks. Yeah, I know, you're playing Kansas. How pumped up can you be for that? The game will be Saturday night, 6 o'clock, and it will be on TV. It'll be on Fox Sports. The Sooners, last time I checked, were, I think, a 5-touchdown favorite to win this ball game. Before we talk about the matchup, and really not a whole lot to talk about as long as OU takes care of business on Saturday night. If you hadn't seen it, the latest BCS rankings are out, came out on Sunday, and the Oklahoma Sooners faring quite well at 9th in the BCS. And I have to admit, you know, a few weeks ago after that Kansas State loss, I thought as far as the national picture that it would be impossible for Oklahoma to figure into it. Not only because they had just lost to Kansas State and had dropped out of the top 15 in one poll, but because you just didn't know if the Sooners were going to play at a high level this season. At that point, you didn't have a whole lot of reason to be optimistic. But after what we saw against Texas Tech, and of course most recently against Texas, there is a lot of reason to be optimistic. The Sooners look like they are an oiled machine, offensively and defensively. Now, do I think that they will play for the national championship? I still don't think that's going to happen. At the beginning of the year, I did not pick them to go to the national championship. I did pick them to win the Big 12, but not to win the national title. Alabama's going to run the table. Alabama's clearly the best team in the country, period, okay? And then you're going to have to hope, since I think Alabama is going to run the table, that the Oregon Ducks, you have to hope that they're going to lose at some point, okay? That's another thing to keep in mind is Oregon. Okay, you might say, well, what about Florida? Well, the Florida Gators, their situation, if they keep running the table, that'll take care of itself with a showdown against Bama in the SEC championship. So you're going to have to hope that if the SEC champion doesn't lose, you're going to have to hope that Oregon loses. It's that simple. Of course, Oklahoma needs to win the rest of their games to have a shot. And the strength of schedule part. This is where playing UTEP and Florida A&M kill Oklahoma. That drags that strength of schedule component in the computer rankings down. So you have to hope that Notre Dame's only loss this year is to the Sooners on October 27th. Notre Dame goes 11-1. That will be a big boost for the Sooners. But again, so many things have to happen. A lot of those things are beyond Oklahoma's control. That's what the Kansas State loss did for Oklahoma. It really hurt them. But we'll see how things pan out. Remember, at this time last season, you know who the #1 team in the country was according to the BCS? Yeah, Oklahoma. And, of course, we all know what happened shortly after against Texas Tech. So it just goes to show you that things can change. It shows you that things can change in the blink of an eye. So for Oklahoma, take care of business week by week, and then see what happens elsewhere. You can't control the elsewhere factor. But right now, at least Oklahoma is in the conversation, ranked #9, and we'll see how the rest of the season shakes out for the Crimson and Cream. Now, I have a prop for this one. Of course, we all know what this is. It's the grand old sandwich. If you want to be more specific, it's one of my favorites, peanut butter and jelly. Now, Oklahoma this week is in a sandwich game. I'll explain why. Right there, that piece of bread's Texas, the team OU just played last week. This piece of bread right here, though, is Notre Dame, the team that OU will play not this week, but next week. So sandwich right in the middle between Texas and Notre Dame is the center part. That's Kansas. That's why we call it the sandwich game. You got one opponent that is squeezed in between two of your bigger games of the season. Sometimes sandwich games, not that they serve as losses, but sometimes sandwich games are just those type of games in which the favorite just doesn't get jacked up to play. Why would Oklahoma get jacked up to play a team that's only win this season was the first game of the year against a no-name? Why would Oklahoma get jacked up to play a team that hasn't won a conference game in 2 years? Why would Oklahoma get jacked up to play the Kansas Jayhawks? Might have something to do with the fact that Bob Stoops has never lost to Kansas. And it might have something to do with, no offense to Kansas, that the Jayhawks just stink. That's the bottom line. So the sandwich game often serves as a game. It doesn't matter what these coaches are going to tell the OU players this week, what they tell the media, what they tell us. There's no way Oklahoma is going to be fully jacked and focused to play this game. Now, it shouldn't matter in the big picture. It might matter for a quarter, and in the case of last year, it mattered for half. Because remember, the week after Texas, OU went to Kansas and really stunk up the field, leading by only 10 at halftime. They did pull away in the second half, but it was one of their more lethargic performances of the year. And it's because in football, it is very difficult to get mentally jacked up to play every week. Now, when you're playing a team like Notre Dame, like OU will play next week, ranked in the top 5 in the country, of course OU will be jacked up for that one because that'll be in front of a nationally televised audience and it will have a lot of national implications. This game, however, doesn't serve to be in that case. So I would expect Oklahoma to win easily in terms of the scoreboard, but it may not be as crisp of an effort as we saw last week against Texas, in which they were not only a well-oiled machine on the field, but you could tell that they come in extremely well prepared. Now, if there are some good things about the Kansas Jayhawks that deserve to be highlighted, it's the fact that they did play Oklahoma State competitive. If you watch that game, it was one of the most boring conference games I've seen in a long time. It was also a game that had a lightning delay, and so it was just one of those games where both teams really didn't look like they were at their best. But in spite of that, Oklahoma State up 20-0. You think this game's over in the third quarter. Well, with just a few minutes left to go in the fourth, Kansas draws to within 6 points at 20-14. And Kansas might have had a shot at the end. They would have had to driven the length of the field in the final 2 minutes with no timeouts. Who knows? But they costed themselves any chance of getting the ball back when they roughed the Oklahoma State punter. Kansas couldn't stop the clock after that. Automatic first down for OSU. Game was over. But still in that ball game, Kansas did show a lot of fight, a lot of heart. Charlie Watts, I'm sure, has been waiting for this. They didn't quit. And they were within 6 points of a team that humiliated them in Stillwater the year before. Now, another thing that helps Kansas is the fact that they have James Sims back. He serving a suspension from the offseason, missed the first 3 games, come back, and he's looked pretty good. I think he has over 300 yards rushing for the year. He had over 100 yards rushing in the loss last week against the Cowboys, but had a touchdown in that game as well. So, overall, he's looked good. Picked up from where he left off last year. Remember, Sims also had a huge run last year against the Sooners. I think it was an 80-yarder that he busted against OU for a touchdown in the 2011 meeting. So Kansas does have some nice pieces to it. Bottom line, though, they just don't have enough offense. They are 111th in the country when it comes to total offense. I think they average about 14 points a game. Defensively, they've shown signs of improvement, but the big problem that Kansas has faced all year long, and the problem they're going to face this Saturday, is when their offense has to keep settling for 3 and outs, when they keep punting the ball. You put the Kansas defense back on the field, and it's harder in football to play defense than it is offense. And when you're on the field a lot longer than your offense, that not only spells a loss, but it spells a lopsided defeat. Kansas is fighting, but let's just face it, they might have horses, but Oklahoma has thoroughbreds. And it doesn't matter how Oklahoma prepares for this game. They should be able to handle the Jayhawks, and they should be able to handle them pretty close to that point spread, about 30, 31 points, something like that. But again, don't expect this to be one of Oklahoma's greatest efforts. On the scoreboard, shouldn't look like much of a contest, but just really look at how Oklahoma plays this weekend. And by the way, Kansas, speaking of some other bright spots for them, for one half a few weeks ago against Kansas State, they were right there with the Wildcats. As a matter of fact, they had, I think, at one point led 14-7. It was a close game for one half. And then the second half in Manhattan, Kansas State just absolutely rolled all over them. But for one half, it was a game. So don't be surprised if in this first half, OU might be leading, but maybe it's not the lead that Sooner fans are expecting. It may not be 35-0 or 36-2, what we saw in Dallas against Texas. Now, from now on, we are going to go ahead and eliminate the 4 keys to the game. This really takes up too much time during the show. And in addition, some of these 4 keys to the game that we've done throughout the years get repetitive. So what we're going to do is we're still going to critique the Sooners during the post-game show. We're going to give them a letter grade for offense, defense, special teams, as well as overall grade, based upon how they played. For example, OU might have scored 45 or 49 this weekend against Kansas, but if they didn't look great doing it, they're not going to get an A. So it's based upon how they performed on offense, defense, special teams, and overall grade. Not necessarily in the final score, but how they did compared to the potential. Final thoughts on this game. Once again, this is the classic sandwich game for Oklahoma. You got Notre Dame coming up next week. That's the game people are already talking about, and it's not even here yet. Still more than a week away. So Kansas is not going to get Oklahoma's undivided attention. However, it's a talent mismatch, and Kansas, again, hasn't won a conference game in 2 years. And to compound the problem for Kansas, the game is in Norman. Look for Oklahoma to roll. I will go 44-10, the final, the Sooners to win and win comfortably. And then it's on to the Notre Dame game on October 27th, also in Norman. Again, that's my final score, and I will have my college football pick show. That will be coming up, should be on Thursday, October the 18th, and then my post-game show will be very late Saturday evening or early Sunday morning between Oklahoma and Kansas. I'll have that post-game for you a few hours after the ball game has ended. Boomer Sooner, and here's to the almighty sandwich.